My name is Paul Bosco. I'm a lawyer at Murphy Battista. I'm here today to talk about insurance in the context of acquired injuries, critical illness, disability, and loss of life. Now, these are, of course, separate areas and there are differences between them. However, today I'm just going to refer to them all as disability insurance. Now, the goal for today isn't an in-depth legal analysis of each of these areas, rather to provide a broad, general overview with a little bit of an explanation of the process for obtaining this, some key points, some points that are often looked over, and just to give a bit of a plain language explanation of each of these different areas. The basics of disability insurance are ensuring that you're protected in the event you sustain an injury, disability, or critical illness. This protection often includes coverage for medical expenses, partial payment for income while you're unable to work, and sometimes includes a one-time payment. Disability insurance is often considered peace of mind insurance, meaning you acquire it, you can rest assured that in most cases you should be protected. I was told once that you want your disability insurance to be the worst investment you ever make in your life, and the meaning for that is essentially you don't want to have to realize on the investment that you've made, rather you want to pay it and never have to actually cash in on it. The reality is it's just something that you want to have there in case the unthinkable does happen. My tips on the basics of insurance coverage are to take some time to think about the coverage that you want to have to protect yourself and your family. There are many options available, many different ranges of coverage available, and it's important to take the time to really consider the level that you want to be protected. It's not a topic that people like to think about generally, something horrible happening to you or a family member. However, it's important that you think about it before that event occurs rather than after. So moving on to choosing the right insurance. The first step in ensuring that you are protected is obtaining the insurance. Many people are provided with insurance through their work, but many people are not, and of course many people are either self-employed or unemployed. Those that do have insurance through their work should review the policy and ensure it covers them for everything that they want and that they're looking for in their insurance coverage. And if it doesn't, consider obtaining supplemental insurance privately. For those that are seeking out and obtaining their own disability or other insurance, make sure they explore their options and find a policy that meets their goals. My tip for people when it comes to choosing the right insurance is to seek out coverage that satisfies the level that you took the time to think about. If you already have coverage, make sure your existing coverage has that in place, and if it doesn't, make sure you find coverage that brings it up to the level that you're looking for. Well, enough insurance is a relative term different for everyone. It's important that you find out specifically what you are covered for, the amounts of money that are paid out in the event that something happens, as well as the situations where that money can be paid out, and ensure that aligns with what you are trying to get from your insurance coverage. For some people who have modest means and are happy with a lower level of insurance coverage, don't want to pay as much for it, they might be happy with a smaller amount of money. But for someone who wants a higher level of protection for them and their family, they might be willing to pay a little bit more to have more protection available. The next thing I want to talk about is knowing what your insurance does and doesn't cover, and this is a very important topic. Most people think that they have greater coverage available than they actually do. This can be attributed to the fact that most people think they have or are obtaining blanket protection that looks after them if something bad happens to them no matter what. The reality is most insurance companies advertise in such a way as to make people think that this is the case and they are protected in all areas if they buy their insurance. Unfortunately, insurance coverage is governed by specific contracts and often riddled with exclusions or limitations as to what the insurance company will or will not pay out for. Common exclusions include pre-existing medical conditions, and it's something that's really important to be aware of. I'll be talking a little bit about the application process and the importance of making sure you have accurate and fulsome information provided, and that is certainly one of the points that, if not properly considered, can be something the insurance company turns to in attempting to deny or otherwise refuse a claim. Lots of people do have existing conditions. That's just the unfortunate reality of most people's daily lives. And the reality is that some insurance coverage may not be available to a person who does have an existing condition. It's important that the person shops around and seeks out insurance and coverage that works within the confines of the reality for them. If they have a condition, make sure that you're forthright about that when applying, and make sure that despite that, the insurance company is still willing to insure you. That can be a big problem. If you don't tell an insurer or even insurance broker who's selling you the policy of insurance that you don't have an existing condition, or if you're for whatever reason don't give them full information that they request, they can turn around and refuse to honor the policy if you do end up needing to use it, and that can be a big problem for people. So the reality is that most people never see or read their insurance contract, and with good reason. These contracts are often very complex, and most people probably can't understand what they mean even if they did try and read them. In fact, many lawyers struggle to understand these contracts, and it's usually just a few lawyers who specialize in this area who truly understand what these contracts mean. Insurance companies actually routinely need to hire these specialized lawyers to tell them what their own insurance contracts mean. So my tip when it comes to this area is to make sure you understand exactly what the insurance coverage you have or you're seeking covers and what it doesn't. If in doubt, speak to a lawyer who has experience in this area. So moving on to applications and dealing with insurance brokers. For those obtaining their own insurance or supplementing insurance provided through another source, they need to apply for coverage. This is often done through an insurance broker, which is like a salesperson for insurance. This is an incredibly important step in ensuring you're protected. I mentioned briefly, but if you don't provide truthful and accurate information at this stage, even accidentally, you could risk not being covered in the event you need to make a claim. Even if this incorrect information is not related to the thing that you're making a claim for, you could still potentially be denied. It is the obligation of the insurance broker or the insurance company to request all the information they need to make a decision on whether or not they will provide you with coverage. However, it is your obligation to provide that information. So a general rule at this stage is it's better to over-disclose than under-disclose. And if you ever have questions about a specific medical question being asked of you, certainly consult with a doctor to make sure you have the right answers. My tip on applications is to simply take your time, review the application forms thoroughly and completely, make sure you understand every question, and ensure you're providing truthful and accurate information throughout. Moving on to ensuring ongoing coverage. So you took the time to think about the coverage you want, you shopped around and found the best option for what you're looking for, you worked with a broker to apply, and you were ultimately granted coverage. Great. However, it's important you make sure your coverage remains in place from there. Some common missteps in this regard can be failing to provide medical information requested by an insurance company in a timely manner or at all, or failing to pay your premiums regularly and on time. Even some policies that don't require applications, such as policies obtained through an employer, still have ongoing requirements that you, as the insured, need to keep up on. If you're in doubt as to what your ongoing obligations are, ask the broker, ask the insurance company, or ask a lawyer with experience in this area. My tip in this area is to stay vigilant. Know what your obligations are and make sure you're keeping up your end of the bargain. Certain insurance companies and policies require ongoing disclosure and disclosure of any changes that may happen in your life over time. And the reality is how we are today or the day we're applying for insurance is not going to be the same as we are as time progresses. It depends on the policy that you've entered into and the requirements that they have, but it's always important to check and see if that is a requirement of your insurer to provide them with this ongoing updates as they may happen. Because if it is, and you don't provide that, you may risk voiding coverage or losing your claim if you need to actualize that. So moving on now to making the claim. Now hopefully it doesn't come to this, but after all of this, let's say that the unthinkable does happen. You're injured or you acquire a disability or you sustain a serious illness. This can be a horrible life-changing experience in itself, and the reality is that the disability coverage or the other insurance coverage that you've obtained can be all but necessary to cover medical expenses, lost wages, or any other expenses that may come up. So it goes without saying that you don't want to let anything happen that may jeopardize or otherwise risk your claim for coverage. Now, Every insurance company and policy has different requirements for making a claim, so it's important that you're aware of the requirements specific to your situation. In most cases, you have to report your claim to the insurance company within a relatively short period of time. This can usually be done either by phone or online. And once this is done, the insurance company typically assigns an adjuster to handle your case, and that adjuster will be in contact with you with what the next steps are. These next steps may be you providing further particulars of what's happened and what you're claiming for. It might be that you have to provide medical evidence or other evidence in support of your claim. And although the adjuster will and has an obligation to follow up with you, it's important that you stay on top of your own claim to make sure that things are under control. My tip in this area is to act quickly, know what's required of you, and to follow up. Making the claim's not always the first thing on our minds after something awful happens to us or a family member. However, it is important to make sure we're doing everything we can to make sure that that claim goes ahead without any problems. There are sometimes exceptions or allowances made when people are simply unable to adhere to procedural requirements. However, sometimes there are not, and that can sometimes be strictly adhered to. So it's very important that you do everything you can to either yourself or with the help of someone else, potentially hiring a lawyer to help you with this, to make sure you're taking the steps required of you. Disputing a denial. Now, insurance companies are essentially betting that a person who has a policy won't need to use it or just won't use it. This is how they make money. It's not surprising that they'll often do what they can to avoid paying out claims. Insurance companies do have a duty to act in good faith when managing your claim. However, in practical terms, claims are still commonly denied when they shouldn't be. In fact, it happens a lot more than a lot of people think. Two common ways insurance companies try to avoid paying claims are, first, to scrutinize the insurance application form looking for errors in what the person said or the answers to the questions they may have given, and second, to put in exclusions that limit the situations or amounts they have to pay out. I've already discussed both of these, but these are both examples of why it's so important to make sure you properly complete the application as well as know exactly what is in your insurance coverage versus what isn't. Some other common reasons for denials are insurance companies saying there's a lack of medical evidence or other evidence to support your claim, and insurance companies saying that an injury or illness isn't sufficient to require treatment or prevent you from working. Now, it's important to know that just because your claim was denied doesn't mean it's the end of the road. There are certainly some situations where an awful thing happens and you may not be covered by insurance. However, there's sometimes situations where, despite their legal obligations, claims will be denied when they shouldn't be by insurance companies. This is why it's so important to make sure you explore your options should this happen to you. Now, my tip in this regard is to not think that a denial is the end of the road for your claim. This may be the most important takeaway from this discussion today. It may well be that your claim was properly denied, but it may well be that this isn't the case. Some insurance companies have time limits on when you can appeal your denials, but these are not binding. The reality is, in BC, the current law is that you have 2 years from the date of a denial to either resolve your claim or file a lawsuit to protect your interests. If you do not do this within this time frame, you'll most likely lose the ability to do so. So it's very important to be aware of this time frame and to take steps to see if there are options for you despite a denial. This is where getting a lawyer involved can absolutely be crucial. Common misconception. Adjusters assigned by insurance companies are often looking out for the best interests of the insurance company. You need to make sure you're looking out for your own interests and make sure that you're doing everything you can to protect your claim yourself. If that means hiring someone to look out for your interests, that may well be required in some circumstances. So that's it. This is obviously a lot of information to digest. Of course, if there's any questions, I encourage people to follow up, and I'm available anytime for an email or a quick phone chat, and I'd be happy to discuss any of this further.